Hey, Chris Lipe here. I want to talk about 5 amazing singers that don't necessarily have great voices, and what makes their voices not only work, but thrive in what they do. As vocalists, we can learn a ton from these types of singers, because as we're so focused on becoming technically proficient or supremely confident or expanding our range or doing, achieving, while we're busy achieving, they're busy making art. They're busy doing and communicating through their voice, which is really the most important thing. And a lot of the things that we tend to focus on as students of the voice are actually secondary to the art that these singers and the communication skills that these singers have and understand how to use. Now, that said, if you want a solid foundation for taking your voice to the next level so that you can use it as a communication tool, as an art tool, be sure to click the link below and join my free vocal course. In no particular order, here we go. Singer number 1, Jimi Hendrix.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
The guy does not have a good sense of control. He sounds lazy. But what makes this guy work? And he would admit, in articles I've read with him commenting on his voice, he admits that he can't sing. But there's an attitude that he conveys. And of course, the guitar playing and the performance aspect of what he did on stage, but also the pioneer that he was experimenting in the studio. The fact that it wasn't about his voice actually made the music better. So he understood that his voice was secondary to the entire experience, to the Jimi Hendrix experience. That meant that it wasn't about being the best vocalist. It was about the attitude. It was about the guitar playing. It was about the energy that he conveyed during his performances. And even in that, because he could admit that he wasn't a great singer and didn't care, you hear that, particularly in the live performances, but also in the studio. He just gets up and goes for it. He doesn't worry that he's on pitch or not on pitch. He worries about delivering confidence, even in the midst of his lack. This is important as we think about our own voices. It's more about how we project ourselves and the confidence that we portray than it is about actually being good. And I've talked about this in other videos. Jimi Hendrix is the embodiment of this type of singer. Next. Bob Dylan. You wouldn't say that there's anything superb about Bob Dylan's voice, but we have to think about the writing, the fact that he had lots to say to a particular time period, in a particular time period, the songwriting, not only for the time, but for all time, was and is just incredible. They are timeless. And I have to confess, I wasn't even alive during his prime, and I wouldn't consider him to be a singer to model my singing after, but his attitude and particularly his tone in his earlier recordings, that bright, lazy sound, there's a lot there in terms of influence when you listen to some other singers. Tom York, Chris Martin, some of these guys. When you listen to Bob Dylan and how his melodies sort of exist over the top of these songs, there's a real charm to it. And this type of charm, I don't think would really happen with the attitude that, every note's got to be right. Everything's got to be perfect or dialed in. That's not the mindset behind this type of singing. And we would do well as singers who are on the quest for our own voice, we would do well to understand that a lot of times it's about existing within a setting and being what that setting needs. That's really the most important thing. And I think a lot of the same things that I discussed with Jimi Hendrix apply to Bob Dylan too. The overarching package, the overarching energy that comes from the songwriting, from the production, it works. And that's a huge accolade to the producers as well that worked on some of this stuff, finding how a voice that is less than perfect can work and work better than a voice that is perfect in the context of the music that that artist is creating. That's some good producer mindset there. And a lot of that comes from the artist also, understanding their art and how their voice works. Your voice doesn't have to be right, good, or perfect to work. It has to have a certain energy that comes with it. And Bob Dylan knows that. Our third in no particular order is Tom Waits.
They'll never win you back. I'll see you tonight.
What? I mean, listening to that clip and not having any context, you would maybe listen to that and go, is this a joke? Anybody could do that, right? That's by listening to these snippets, and I purposely designed this video like this. When we take some of these things out of context and we listen to them from like a critique standpoint, we're like, oh, this isn't right at all. But when you think about what makes Tom Waits work, the prolific writing, the multiple types of voices that he can do. I mean, he's not always gravelly like that all the time. He's not always doing that kind of thing. He is a lot of time. But listen to the setting, listen to his music, and kind of mentally mute his voice. And then try this at some point. Put in someone like Whitney Houston or, I don't know, some singer who's really regarded as being awesome. And what does it do to the music? It de-emphasizes the edginess, the outsider sort of approach that Tom Waits is so good at existing in. I like to think of Tom Waits and Kurt Cobain in sort of a similar fashion. Although Kurt Cobain had some pipes, I think. And not that Tom Waits doesn't, but, well, hear me out. There's the fact that the voice is a certain texture and there are so many what we would normally think of as wrong imperfections, or that's not the way you'd want to sing. The fact that this works and occurs over the music that they're performing creates an overall vibe that could not be achieved any other way. And if you look at Kurt Cobain, because it's to me, it's a little bit more obviously packaged, what I'm trying to communicate here. If you put a picture perfect voice into Nirvana and not Kurt Cobain's teetering, imperfect sounding voice, then you lose the essence of those songs. And Tom Waits embodies that in a more extreme yet less obvious way. When I first heard Tom Waits, I completely wrote him off. Like, this stuff is awful. Why would anybody want to listen to it? But a buddy of mine really encouraged me, put on the album, listen to an album from start to finish, and then tell me what you think. And I was pleasantly surprised. I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed the arc, I enjoyed the writing, and I enjoyed the dynamics, particularly that he did with his voice. Next, Neil Young.
Searching for a heart of gold.
Now, there's a lot that could be said if we want to drill down into the technical aspects of Neil Young's voice, but he would be the last person to even entertain that idea. If Neil Young was selling himself as a vocalist, of course he'd never make it. If he was supposed to be that guy on The Voice or whatever, that wouldn't happen. But he has approached music from a body of work, much like Bob Dylan, much like some of these other guys, as a complete art form. The jamming nature of the performances that he delivers, collaborations he's done, different sounds that he's explored, even in the context of having a sort of limited or static voice, joined with an attitude that says, what you hear is what you get. What you see is what you get, and it's gonna be good enough. There's a confidence that goes along with that and a disregard for what other people are thinking. And I think that you can see this when he's performing. There's this, here I am, here's what it is. This is an important lesson for us to learn as vocalists, that Neil Young attitude, as I like to call it. Here I am, this is what you get, and whether you like it or not, I don't really care because this is who I am, this is what I sound like, and I'm good with it. It's that confidence that makes any voice stand out and be acceptable even when it's not perfect or even good. Next, Tom Petty.
You can stand me up at the gates of hell.
Now, I would put Tom Petty in a slightly different category than some of these other singers. I think that his voice, especially through the years, I enjoy listening to his voice. But it's still one of those voices that if you were to listen to, if some guy were to, start singing on the street and sound just like Tom Petty without all of the incredible songs, without the touring history, without everything that goes along with Tom Petty, you wouldn't go, oh man, that guy's got an amazing voice. But one thing that I've really picked up from Tom Petty is bright is better. I think a lot of the time earlier in my singing career, I would want to be warm. I would want to be delivering in a way that my voice felt comforting. And so because I wanted to do that, my perception of that is that I needed to swallow my voice. And Tom Petty really, he's on the top list of vocalists that have influenced me to bring my voice forward and to bring my voice more nasally. That has really had a positive impact on my singing. If I'm singing, you could stand me up, if I'm singing that and I'm bringing it back into my tissues and into my body versus projecting it forward and trying to be a forward singer, you could stand me up. Later, after internalizing sort of the Tom Petty essence, later I would come to understand that there are things like, compression, vowel formation, forward placement, support, all these things that are coming into play to create this sort of sound. And then, of course, balancing it with what I hear and what I feel in my own voice. But it was really Tom Petty that helped me understand the beginnings of placing my voice forward and being bright. And I think all of these vocalists, if you listen to them right, you can pick up on things based on their attitudes that really help you come into your own as a singer. I hope this commentary was enjoyable for you. Please leave comments below and let me know what you think. And let me know if there are any other vocalists that you'd put in this category and why. Again, if you want to take your voice to the next level, be sure to join my free vocal course linked below, and we'll see you for more.